guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, Homeowner Association Threatened to Tow My Wheelchair Van for Illegally Parking in My Own Driveway. Never have I felt more discriminated against in my life than I have while living in my homeowner association neighborhood. I live in a beautiful home with my husband, Frank, and my disabled daughter, Georgia. We have resided here for almost 10 years and have modified our house to fit our daughter's special needs. We have several wheelchair ramps and a large handicap-accessible van that lives in the driveway. Like I mentioned, we have lived here for a decade with almost no issues except silly stuff like leaving the trash can out later than we're supposed to. But in the last 6 months or so there had been some changes to policies in the neighborhood's homeowner association. They had decided that they don't want any of the residents to park their vehicles in their driveway. When we first were informed of this change, I couldn't even believe that they would stoop to that level of pickiness. Originally, you couldn't park on the street overnight, which is fair but not your own driveway. Come on. Anyways, my daughter's handicapped van has always stayed in the driveway. We do have a 2-car garage like the rest of the neighborhood, but with my husband's truck and the way that we have to get in and out of the van, it is impossible to keep it in the garage and get the liftgate down without hitting the other vehicle. On top of that, we also have a wheelchair ramp in the garage that takes up too much room, so we have always kept it in the driveway. Dozens of other homes in our neighborhood also parked their vehicles in their driveways, so we were certainly not the only family being affected by this silly new policy. I'm going to be honest, I may have disregarded the first letter or two about the change in parking rules. Mostly because I felt like it was just asinine to be so controlling about such a trivial thing. It didn't take too long before we started getting threats about fines from the homeowner association. These letters started coming in daily. But I continued to see others keeping their cars in their driveways too. Then one day, we actually received a letter stating that our van in particular is an eyesore and devalues the neighborhood, especially because we live near the front. This felt like a personal attack. Other homeowners were still leaving their vehicles out, so why are they focusing our van specifically? Because it's big and ugly according to them. I didn't know what I should do next. We can't remove the wheelchair ramp unless we want our daughter to have to go around the front of the house where there is another ramp, which is much farther and less convenient than the garage. I took some advice from friends and decided to play nice at first. I sent an email trying to explain the situation with the van and the garage, hoping that they would see some sense or at least have kindness towards us. Nope. They didn't care at all. As a matter of fact, the next letter had the first fine attached to it. They wanted $100 for leaving it out overnight for the last week. I have already spent enough money on their homeowner associations and now they want more for parking on my own property? This meant that they would not see reason or have any kind of respect for my daughter's disability and our situation at home. I felt like it is just a common right to be able to park in your driveway and have a handicapped accessible van for your disabled family member. My family and I, daughter included, decided that we would attend the next homeowner association board meeting, which was later that week. I had heard from my neighbor that one of the new members is probably the reason for this sudden change in neighborhood policies. When we arrived, there were a few other residents there, ones that have probably been equally harassed lately. We sat down and proceeded to wait our turn to talk, but it seemed like they didn't want to give us a chance. I raised my hand to speak, and they simply glanced over me and acted like I wasn't there. I recognized one of the ladies in the middle. There were 6 total members, as a woman that walks her 3 shepherds every morning down my street. She had a truly Disney villain-like smile on her face when I stood up to talk after she intentionally ignored me. "Madam, we will get to you if we have time." She waved me off and continued to talk with the people next to her about something I couldn't hear. I almost sat down, but instead Georgia decided to speak up. "You're clearly not busy, so I think that you should have some respect for my mother and the other people in this meeting." The woman blinked several times and laughed. "I don't have to do anything, you aren't running this show. The meeting is over anyways." It was easily 15 minutes before the hour, and she decided to cut it short to avoid discussing anything with us. A few others in the room grumbled under their breath and stormed out with us following them. I glance back before leaving the view and see that bitch staring at my daughter, a strange expression of almost distaste on her face. That look said it all. This was a personal affront to my family. She has some kind of plan in mind, and it is us that she is targeting with this change in driveway parking rules. We went home and I immediately got to work finding a disability lawyer and researching the Fair Housing Act and any other laws against discrimination for a physical disability. It took me a few days and a lot of coffee and patience, but I felt like I had a good case. The lawyer I hired had done several cases for disability discrimination and was very confident as well. While our lawyer was doing his part in putting together information, he advised that I go around to my neighbors and try to gather signatures to dispute the change in parking and maybe even gather a petition for a change in board members. While I wasn't in favor of disbanding the homeowner association board entirely, I definitely wanted that new lady, let's call her Jane, and her henchman gone. My lovely neighbor Angie decided to help me as it was a large neighborhood and somewhat of a tall order to go door to door and collect signatures. She took one half, and I took the other. The thing that is a little difficult is not knowing which houses are the board members. I would obviously recognize them if they answered the door, but it didn't make it any less awkward. Angie and I had a surprising number of residents that wanted to challenge the board on their policy changes, and many of them said that they would attend the next meeting. We continued to have positive results and very few were unwilling to sign. Thankfully, I didn't see any of the board members as they probably just refused to answer their door. That is until the end of the evening when Angie and I were walking back home. Jane was standing in my driveway, waiting for us in all her snobby, snaggy glory. She had that same smug expression, but this time with a hint of anger. Once we were within earshot, she proceeded to explain very loudly and annoyingly that we were not within our rights to discuss the homeowner association policies with neighbors and that I could be fined again for soliciting signatures. Which I'm sure is BS. I told her that I wouldn't discuss anything with her unless it was in writing and that she needed to take her rude butt off my property before I called the cops. She continued to ramble and rant in my driveway about the van and our insubordination and that she would be calling her own authorities and having it towed. We ignored her, and Angie and I went inside and drank some wine for our troubles. The next morning, I woke up as usual and went to take my daughter to school where she attended a local university. When we went outside, we were shocked to find that there was no van. It had really been towed. There was a note taped to the front door stating that it was removed and how we could get it back. With another section stating that it will be towed daily if we continue to park it in the driveway. I am beyond upset. Georgia was crying and angry, my husband was seething. He went through the steps to get the van back and I called the lawyer and updated them on the new events. He stated that without some kind of written warning first, they should not have had the authority to have it towed. Obviously, that doesn't matter though, because the homeowner association had it done anyway. Our lawyer had found out that the board was up for review this month, meaning that if we had enough people to vote that we could easily have them all removed or even disband that homeowner association. Me and several of the residents in the neighborhood got together the night before and decided that we were going to join forces to make a change for the better. They cannot tow my vehicle without warning and discriminate against my family and others for what we drive and my daughter's disability. We had to spend a lot of money to get the van back and also couldn't keep it at our house, so we took it to my father's. He was kind enough to drive it back and forth to take Georgia to school while we were dealing with this headache. Eventually the board meeting came, and a shocking number of residents showed up. I mean, the room was packed. There was nowhere to sit. Jan's face was one of worry this time. She was clearly not expecting this kind of turnout. Our lawyer stood next to us, also a little surprised that we managed to put together this kind of crowd. He said he'd never heard of or seen so many people at a homeowner association meeting. When the meeting commenced, the crowd started buzzing. You could barely hear Jane speak over all the murmuring among the people. She shouted to get the group's attention but was shot down by one of the louder folks who stood up and demanded that they were there to vote them off or disband them. My husband joined and pointed out their discriminatory behavior towards our family and others for having to park the handicapped van or other larger vehicles in the driveway. Jane tried to argue, but our lawyer decided to take his turn to talk. He passed up the papers with our state's laws regarding FHA and Americans with Disabilities Act, highlighting that it was genuinely illegal to tow a vehicle from our driveway when it is necessary for my daughter's quality of life. Our van in no way interferes with the neighborhood, it is for non-commercial use, and the ramps that block it from fitting are necessary for my daughter's daily life and needs. Therefore, our van is 100% legally allowed no matter what their stupid homeowner association says, and if they continue to harass us that we have grounds to sue them." The room erupted with chatter as Jane and her board members stared at the paperwork. Many people were loudly saying that we should sue them anyway and that we needed people on the board that were going to be fair and caring about the neighborhood's residents and not have their own personal agendas. Needless to say, the large and angry crowd demanded a vote. Every current member had to leave the homeowner association board and several new and better members were appointed, including myself and Angie. It didn't take long for a few of the homes to go up for sale. We knew who they were. Jane was the first to leave. She couldn't take all the nasty looks and comments from people about how she ought to be ashamed for harassing a nice family with a disabled daughter. Serves her right for being a bully. The new homeowner association board members and myself have done a great job of not harassing people and making our neighborhood a wonderful and peaceful place to live. The next story is titled, Parking Garage Damaged Car. On November 30th, I brought my car to a New York City parking garage. I immediately noticed it was way over capacity, but they had a coupon for $12 for 12 hours and they were pretty centrally located. Plus, it was an Icon garage, and they're a fairly big name in parking. They had me pull about an inch away from the wall on the right so that a car could drive up the middle, as a car was already parked on the left side. I rode down like this until the attendant took the car. When I picked the car up, they pulled it around at the same time as 3 other cars, with mine in the front. I began walking around the car to check for damage. I got partway around when the car in back of me began beeping. The attendant ordered me to move my car. I responded that I was checking for damage. He yelled, "It's fine. Move the car right now." He waved the other car around me, and it was clear that it was going to hit mine if I didn't move it, so I pulled the car out without finishing my inspection. I dropped my passenger off, and went home, parking my car at the end of the driveway with another spot to my right and a patch of grass to the left. I didn't drive on Sunday, so the car stayed where it was. On Monday morning I left for work and noticed there was a decent-sized ding in my rear passenger side door, the side facing the grass. I called up the garage and brought this to his attention. The attendant said it was impossible because no car of that make and model had been there that night. When I informed him that I had paid by credit card, and still had my parking stub with a location on it along with an employee's initials, he changed his tune. He laughed and informed me they weren't responsible once I drove off. When I brought up that an employee ordered me out and put my car in danger, he laughed again and said, "You have no proof that that happened, and our employees would not have done that." I told him that there are security cameras all over the garage, and if he's confident they didn't do it, then he shouldn't have a problem showing me the footage. He responded, "It's not our responsibility." I filed a complaint with Consumer Affairs yesterday along with a photo of the damage caused and a copy of my parking stub with the location and initials on it. I wouldn't be so upset, if not for the fact that I'm pretty sure the guy bullied me out of the garage because he knew he damaged the car and didn't want me to find it there. So, at this point, even if I lose, I just want to create as much of a headache for these people as possible. From what I've gleaned from Google, they're famous for this type of behavior, and then either don't show up in court or send whatever attendant is on duty that day without any proof. I found out that as I am not a resident of New York, reside in New Jersey, I can file suit in small claims court via mail for a $15 fee. This is a car I just purchased on November 9th. At this point I've come up with the following pieces of documented evidence. Parking stub proving the attendant lied about my car being there. Photo of damage caused by Icon parking attendant. Receipt proving date of purchase of new and undamaged car, November 9th. Sworn and notarized statement from my passenger attesting to the lack of any noticeable damage on the car when I picked her up. Sworn and notarized statement from the owner of the property where the car was parked attesting that the car was not driven at all on Sunday. At this point, I'm going to take it to my body guy and see if he can compound it out, and after paying him, send Icon a certified letter of demand for the repair cost before proceeding forward with a small claims case. Does this sound like a good course of action? I'm well aware that it's probably not worth my time, and were it not for the behavior of these employees I'd probably just pay for it out of pocket and let it go, but as I said, if nothing else I'm giving them as much of a headache as I can in paperwork. Update. After doing a bit of research, I filed a complaint with the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. I included all documentation, photos, receipts, repair estimate, and records of previous interaction. I also stated that I had witnesses who would attest to the state of the car before it got to the garage, the behavior of the attendant, and that it was not driven in the intervening time. Today I received a call that while denying responsibility, in exchange for me dropping the complaint and not pursuing the matter in small claims court, the garage has agreed to pay the estimate for my repairs. Thank you to those of you who offered your advice. It is greatly appreciated. The last story is titled, Landlord Demanding Entry to Do Non-Essential, Non-Emergency Renovations. My partner and I are in a situation currently where our new landlords are trying to enter our apartment without our consent to do renovations that would impede us from removing a lot of our furniture. The house we live in, which was turned into a duplex, was recently sold, and so far, we have had relatively positive experiences with them, until we asked politely that they hold off on renovations until our lease ends November 1st. Essentially, here is how the timeline has gone thus far. 1. They mentioned putting an interior wall and door in our apartment because the landlord will be living downstairs and does not want to walk around the back entrance for the first floor apartment, doesn't want to walk around to get her mail. 2. We did not agree or disagree to this renovation, especially not in writing, but stated it made sense to do it that way. 3. We contemplated this renovation for a while and made the realization that by doing so, and also by doing electrical work, we will not be able to get our furniture out of the space it leaves by adding in the wall/door, and with electric being shut off we would not be able to work. We both work from home, I don't have an office. 4. We sent a very polite and professional email to said landlords demonstrating our concern about being able to remove our furniture in November when we moved out, as we have relatively large furniture that was expensive, and by adding in the wall and door, we would not be able to fit anything down the only entry point we could get things in when moving in here November of 2020. We also of course expressed concern over the fact we would not be able to work since they would be doing construction right outside of both of our offices for what would probably be a week or 2 weeks. We would also have to board our cats with special medical needs. 5. They have demanded right to entry regardless of circumstance and have stated it is legally within their right to enter and renovate the property as they see fit, even with us living in the unit. They did state that they understand legally they have to give us a 24-hour notice, Kentucky state law. 6. Our lease is up in November. They agreed to hold off on construction of the apartment until October, and told us to move our stuff out prior to construction beginning, which I feel in itself is illegal. Our lease would still not be finished, and we would essentially be living without furniture for what could be the month of October. So that is the gist of the situation. Landlords want to tear down and build a new wall/door inside of our unit. We politely asked them to wait until we are done with our lease, or if we could end the lease early, giving them freedom to complete construction. And when I mean early, I mean October 1st rather than November 1st. They've agreed to hold off on construction a few months but have made it abundantly clear that they have legal right to enter our home without our consent to do unnecessary and non-emergency renovations. There might be something I'm leaving out, but I'm trying to summarize this as best I can, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We are also in Kentucky and have looked at KY state laws, and it seems the law is on our side, thankfully. Edit. My partner made a good point. When they bought the house, they did not do a comprehensive inspection of our unit, and we have a feeling they are going to try everything they can to keep our deposit. Is there anything we can do to fight for our deposit back? Update. We have since been discussing this with our downstairs neighbor who is getting kicked out so one of the landlords can live in his unit. Our downstairs neighbor is also a lawyer who has been looking into these people who are operating under a false LLC. We are in Kentucky where we have a bit of protection for tenants, thankfully. Essentially, they have signed our lease agreement under an LLC that does not exist, or at least it no longer exists. We are also paying rent via wire transfer directly to this entity, that again does not exist. They will not let us write checks directly to the owners, but rather directly to the LLC. At this point, we want to just get out of our lease and be done with all of this. With them taking over our lease that is still in the previous owner's name, under a falsified name, as an LLC, what are our options in regard to just getting out of this lease? These people are not trustworthy, and based on other legal findings I've come across, it seems as if falsifying a name on a legal binding contract then makes it a voided contract. Thanks for listening.